All right, please turn your attention to the stage as hailing from the far-off land of the Netherlands is Ant. Please give him a round of applause.
Well, thank you for that introduction. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so thank you for joining me this morning. I appreciate that, given that it was the party last night. Who had a good time at the party? Yeah, there we go. Okay, the people that had a really good time, they're not here, clearly. They're still asleep, right? That's how that is. So I'm going to talk about blueprints today. My name's Anthony. I am a consultant engineer at Jamf, and I look after our education solutions, products, and our education customers. I'm really excited to talk about blueprints. I know we've talked about it a lot already at JNUC, I understand that, but let's talk about it in the context of Jamf School. I did have a customer come up to me just a second ago and said, actually, I'm a Jamf Pro customer, is this still going to be relevant? The answer is yes, okay? But I'm going to do everything in this presentation in the context of school. So we're going to hit 3 different topics. First of all, we're going to take a step back, really, and kind of see what we're doing today. Then we're going to look at how we've done some things in the background at Jamf to modernize our stack before we look at the blueprints in action, which is going to be the best part of the presentation, if you ask me. So first of all, let's take a step back and take a think about what we do today when it comes to MDM. Now, the MDM protocol is at least 15 years old now, which makes it a dinosaur in IT terms, right? It's served us well, don't get me wrong. It was also designed when there was less devices out in the world. And that's important, especially when you think about how devices talk to our MDM servers. It's all driven by the MDM server. The server has to say, hey, Apple, can you go and tell it this device that it needs to check in? I've got something to tell it. And then there's a back and forth with the device, and then that's it. The next time the server wants to do something else, he has to go through this process all over again. So, you know, if you deploy an app, it does this. If you want to know if it's installed, you have to go through this whole process again. And it's all driven by the server. Now think about the amount of devices that are in the world today and under management, okay? This is a messy slide, and there's only 12 or so iPads on the screen. That's all that network traffic that comes across your network with just this. Now think about how many devices you have in your school. Think about how many devices the person next to you has, and just think about how many devices are under management in the world completely, right? This is a very chatty thing. It's always driven by the server. So a couple of years ago, Apple kind of went, yeah, we probably should think about this 15-year-old solution that we have and kind of make it a bit more efficient. So they started to lay the groundwork for something called declarative device management that makes the devices clever. That's the best way that I like to say it. You'll hear us talk about autonomous devices, but I just like to think of it as clever. We give declarations to the device, and they report back through a status channel. So instead, it looks more like this. It starts with the same thing. You have to say, hey, Apple, please, can you check in with the server? And the server goes, yeah, here is a declaration. And like I say, it makes the device clever. So the device goes, okay, so I have some states that I have to be into. I'm going to go away and do that. And every time I conform to that state, without being asked, I'm going to report back to the MDM server. So we're not waiting on the MDM server to say, hey, device, do this. Hey, device, do that. The device is clever enough to just do that on its own. And that could be straight away. Or if that configuration or that declared state happens later on, maybe a couple of hours later, a couple of days later, it still reports in as and when it happens. So we're getting rid of a lot of network chatter with this, but there's more things that make the device clever. For example, if something falls out of almost, I'm going to say, compliance, maybe that's the fact that the OS is now out of date. With DDM, devices can be clever enough to deactivate a particular configuration. So let's just give a really simple example. I'm not on the latest operating system, and therefore you can't have access to your email client. And it's done on the device, not through the MDM. Now you might be sitting here saying, yeah, great, Ant, thanks for that, but this is about Jamf blueprints, and that's what I'm interested in. Well, Jamf blueprints is Jamf's delivery mechanism for DDM. So whenever we talk about blueprints, we're talking DDM when it comes to this kind of stuff. Now, again, you might also go, great, blueprints. Who's heard of blueprints before? Right. You've probably heard them from Jamf now. You've probably heard them from Configurator, and you might have heard them from other places as well. Jamf blueprints are nothing like those, though. Think about blueprints in, say, Configurator. They're monolithic. They're really hard to kind of make individual for just a single device. They're not scalable. It takes a lot of time, and you attach devices to them. Jamf blueprints, they're dynamic, they're scalable, and they're as flexible as the smart groups that you already have in your Jamf instances. So for example, this is a quick example here. I could give a baseline for all of my device types, and then say, hey, staff have a slightly different configuration, senior leaders have a different one again, students, et cetera, et cetera. They can be stacked together. They aren't this monolithic idea that you might have from blueprints before. And that's important for us to kind of keep coming back to, remembering these are flexible. So Jamf blueprints, let's just kind of wrap that up in terms of what it is. It's our delivery of DDM. They're dynamic and flexible, and they allow us to be continuous and rapid with our feature deployment. Now that's quite a statement to make, right? I've just said they allow us to be, provide continuous and rapid delivery of features. Now we can only do that because we've done some things in the background. So I kind of want to share that with you so that you can understand what we're doing and how we can say that statement with quite a lot of confidence. You might know that once upon a time, we only had one product called Jamf Pro. And over the years, we've made some acquisitions, and we've got a couple of different products now. So for example, we've got Jamf Pro and Jamf School. Historically, we've kind of tackled these in a vertical way. The teams don't talk to each other. They might have the same feature set, but they do things differently. So you can see here, I've got my two MDMs, and we've got three features, really original here. The feature person with a key, window, and cog, okay? Each one of our MDMs have these three features. We get to WWDC, and Apple says, hey, I've made enhancements and improvements to these features. And we go, okay. The school team says, I'm not sure if I'm going to implement that cog feature. We're not sure whether it's relevant for our school customers. Pro says, I'm going to do this right away. Even worse, maybe the two teams there at the top for the person with the key, they're doing exactly the same things in exactly the same ways, but it's being maintained by two different teams that don't talk to each other. Or then you have the window. That looks different now. Okay? So we now have two products that are Jamf products that look different, act different, and I still have two sets of teams that don't talk to each other when they're doing development. I think we can be a bit more efficient here, right? So this is what we did at Jamf. We call this our platform services. And instead of building these features directly into our MDMs, we build them as standalone features, I suppose is the best way to look at it. One team looks after that particular feature. And instead of being built directly into the MDMs hook into it. Okay? That allows then that team, for example, to take action on anything that Apple releases immediately, because they're looking for just their feature rather than that whole team looking down, one in school and one in Pro. The best part of this is, once that team has said, hey, I've done that update, and pushes the update, both Pro and School will get that update immediately outside of their normal release cycles, because remember, this code isn't built into the MDM, it's a separate platform service, the MDM hooks into that. So let's change these from my great features here into what we're actually doing here at Jamf. These are things that we are delivering via the platform at the moment. Compliance benchmarks, AI assistant, and for me, blueprints is the important one for today. That's not the end of the story, though. You might have heard us say, hey, can you please create a Jamf account using the Jamf ID or federating this with your IDP? And that's because, well, like I said, we've got a couple of different products, a couple of different portals. We want to make that experience better for you. But also in the background, your Jamf ID or your Jamf account logs into the platform services to pull your data and your configurations. Because remember, it's not part of the MDM, it's its own standalone service. So Jamf account is quite literally the key to blueprints. For an admin, it should and is a seamless experience. But for the sake of this, that red box, everything inside that red box is being pulled in from one of our platform services, our blueprint service. And everything else is code that's in the MDM. But for an admin, you don't need to know about that. The tools are there for when you need them. So as an admin, why should you care about blueprints? Because that's the next question you probably have. Great, Ant, you've got blueprints, why should I care about it? Well, knowing that it's to do with DDM, you've got to understand that over the last couple of years, Apple have brought more feature sets to DDM and have declared that, hey, DDM's the future, this is where we're going. So we might as well get on board with this now. Apple have also said any new MDM features will be declarative, and we've seen that over the last couple of OSs where we've seen a new feature that can only be managed by DDM, as well as bringing us feature sets that we've never had before, we've never been able to manage because we do it now through DDM. And the way that we built blueprints, and because of the way DDM works, we're going to be able to rethink our workflows. So that's a random slide in my slide deck. Let's try this one again. So now we've talked about the theory, why don't we get into the action? Because this is kind of the thing that I want to show you, how this actually works. So I'm going to sort of do a few things with this first example. The first thing is, since we've never configured a blueprint here, at least together, when I do the first one, we're going to go over some of the things that we've done to really help admins to make things simple, efficient. And we're also going to go, first of all, and look at what we're going to do if this was a profile. Let me try that again. What we're going to do is build a config profile, blueprint, about software updates, software update settings, but first look at what it would look like if it was configs, to see how difficult that would be. It's about as difficult as I've just tried to get that out of my mouth, okay? Maybe I'm not quite as ready to do this after the party as I thought I was. Okay, so if we did this with config profiles, what we're about to do, right, and do some settings, the first thing I have to do is choose whether or not I'm doing this for iOS or macOS, or even tvOS. I have to make a choice on the platform. Then I'm going to go away and say, okay, I want to configure some things about software update settings. So that's that list that you can see there, and you've got to look through the list to find anything to do with software update settings. They're not together. They don't always say software in them, and you kind of need to know what it is that you're doing. So once you've looked through that list, you go away and go, okay, I'm just going to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. So you do a Command F to search the whole window. And remember, not everything says software updates in it, so you've still missed stuff. And then you get maybe stuff in the menu that you didn't even want to know about that you searched there as well. What I'm trying to say is it's quite a tedious task. So you do that for your iOS, but you want the same baseline for your macOS. So once you've done it once, you have to do it again, apart from your macOS profile has different lists, the naming conventions are different, and actually there's different payloads as well. So in terms of configuring this in the first place, it's quite tedious. Maintaining it is even worse. So with that, let's look at how Blueprints can change this, simplify the workflow that I was just talking about there. So Blueprints has templates, but since this is the first one, like I said, we're going to build this through in a bit more detail. So this time we're just going to build one from scratch. Obviously, you give it a name. You should probably give it a description as well in production. And this is our Blueprint builder. So what we've got across the top there are sort of like statuses, and they'll be useful for us to give us feedback. Down the side, we have our what we call components, and in the middle is anything that we've configured. So when it comes to the actual components, you can scroll through them, but we know this list will get bigger and bigger. So we can search the bar, use the search bar as well to get you there to get you the setting that you need straight away. To configure it, I can either drag it or just click on it. Now, the first thing that I want to point out, and this is where things start getting scary for people, is that I haven't had to choose whether this is for iOS or macOS. This is telling me I can deploy this blueprint to all of these platforms. So you don't have to configure one for iOS and then one for macOS separately. We can configure once. Now that's a bit scary. We would never do that with a config profile because we'd get errors. As I said, with the config profiles themselves, there was a big list of things that are hard to find. So we've built filters so you can filter down to find the things you need quickly. You can do it on platform, and you've got component-specific keywords. So every time you configure something different, that will look a bit different as well. And then if you need to search for something specifically, you can get there nice and fast. But that's kind of not all that we've done to make the admin experience better, at least in my opinion. So let's zoom in on one of these settings. You can see each one of these boxes is its own kind of key, its own setting. We've got our friendly name there. This is something that we would see in the config profiles. It tells you what it does. But if you're anything like me, you spend time in Apple documentation as well. And that friendly name, you can't find in Apple documentation. So we now give you the Apple technical key as well. And you can use the search functionality to do both of those. So you can really find what it is that you're looking for. And also, where appropriate, we give a description. So I mean, I can't be the only person that's clicked on a box and said, I think that this configures the device this way, deployed it, and then gone, nope, it's nothing like that at all. So we give you that information up front here as well, just making your life easier. Then you'll notice that each one has a tick box or a check box, then you can enable and disable. If it is checked, we send that to the device. If it's not checked, we don't. We don't have this default key notion anymore. So I've done it plenty of times. I just want to shut the camera off. I shut the camera off, send the config profile, and I manage a load of stuff that I didn't mean to because configurations has all these default keys in them. We've made this much simpler with Blueprints. If you want to manage it, you tick it. If it's unticked, we don't send anything else. Makes it really easy for you to manage what you're looking to manage. Now notice as we go through this, Some of these settings are for macOS only, some of them are for iOS only, and some of them are for both. Okay, and I want you to keep an eye on that as we go through it. We also then get to this key install actions here. This is what we class as a complex key. It has multiple parts to it. So to keep things clean, easy, and tidy, we go into a submenu where now I can configure this knowing that it's only related to my install actions. Also, and if you've been in the State of the Union earlier on in the week, please do, forgive me that I'm telling you the same thing again. But if we go away and click on a setting here, then if there's a dependency on another setting, we automatically configure that for you. So we're reducing that possibility that there's errors because you forgot to tick another box somewhere else. We'll do the hard work for you. Once we've gone away and configured this, though, we can click on the Update button, and from the main menu, we can then see what it is we've configured. So we haven't got to go into it every single time just to see what's configured. It's only to configure it. Again, making life much easier. Now, there's plenty of other settings here. We're not going to go through them individually, but please do take note on a few things. One, some of these are for iOS only, some of them are for macOS only, some of them are across the board. Some of these features you've not been able to manage on a particular platform before. Okay, if you try and look for this on config profiles, some of these settings don't exist for iOS, for example. They are now available for iOS through blueprints. So it's that possibility, again, that we're being able to manage things we've never been able to manage before. And like I say, we really want to make sure here that we're really hitting home on the fact that these are for iOS, macOS, and tvOS in our case here. All the platforms. We're not building this just for one. So once we've done that, we click Save. We go back to our blueprint builder. You can see we've got something in the middle now. The next thing that we need to do is hit the Scope button, because like every other kind of configuration we have to scope these things out. These are all the smart groups I already have in my Jamf School instance. I haven't had to build anything new for this. If I've targeted a particular device, I can just use that smart group. But what we are going to do is click on Apple TV, all my Apple TV devices, all my macOS devices, and all my iOS devices. We're scoping this to all of our platforms in one go. Okay, once we've done that, there's a couple of other things to point out very quickly before we move on to seeing what this looks like on a device. There's a recent activity box as well that we're going to see. Oh yeah, you can start seeing things at the top now, how many devices are scoped, that kind of thing. But the recent activity box says it's just been updated, but not deployed. I think this is great, because as an admin, I can go away and configure this and then go, actually, that was a tough configuration. I need to go away and have a coffee before I actually go deploy this, so I can double check it. So you can get your colleague to check this. So as soon as I move away from it, those settings are already saved, but not deployed until you're ready to deploy them. Again, think about this with config profiles. As soon as you hit Scope and Save, it's gone to the device. This gives you that kind of buffer. And you can see from the main menu here that it's never been deployed. You can see if your configs have been deployed but then changed since the last deployment, or if they're up to date. Now I want to go away and deploy this, so I'm going to go back in and hit the deploy button at the top corner there. And it's not until that point that this configuration goes to those devices. Like I say, it's a really nice buffer. You can then see the status part starts to change. Give it a bit of time. This will then come back and give you the actual information. I was impatient for this, so I hit the refresh button instead. So let's go away and do that and see some of the statuses that we've got here. Once it's done that, you'll see that I've got some devices that are deployed, some of them that are pending, and I even actually got an error in this case for some reason. Now, it's all very well and good seeing that in the console, but if you're anything like me as an admin, when you're testing these things, you've got your test device next to you as well, right? Trust but verify. So how do I look for blueprints on my devices, because they're not configuration profiles, right? So on an iPad, it's very similar to what you'd be used to. You go to your menu, you go to your device management, you click on the MDM profile. There's now a new configurations box. That's where your declarations or your blueprints live. For macOS, it's a little bit different. The first part is still the same. I'd go to my general, I go to my device management tab, and we're used to seeing all of our configuration profiles there. Well, blueprints aren't there. You have to find the MDM profile again, and once you click on it, you scroll down to the bottom. So they're in just a slightly different place than what you'd be used to. Once you are at the bottom, you will notice a few things though. Okay? You can see I've got that software update there, that global setting. So if I move the iPad on one, you'll also see that the iPad says the same thing. Because remember, this was one blueprint we sent to both devices. The device is clever. So if we click into this, on the iOS, it didn't activate any of the keys that weren't relevant to it. Because remember, we had some that were macOS only, that only activated on my Mac. That means that I can take that one configuration that can work for all platforms and send it to all of my devices in one go. No longer am I having to maintain 3, 4 different profiles to do this. Now, this is what I mean about thinking differently, simplifying workflows. Okay, this is pretty awesome stuff. So very quickly, we've enhanced and improved the admin experience, we've simplified workflows, and we've extended capabilities. We've seen that already with just that little demo that we had there. And we've looked at update settings, and that's great. That's what the users can do themselves if they want to update. But what happens if you want to force that update as an admin? Because we all want to do that, yes? Yes. Great. So this time we're going to use the template because I just kind of want to show you what that looks like. We have a template here already to update to the latest version. What I like about this is it tells you the steps that you need to go through. So when you come out the back end of this, all you have to hit is deploy, if you don't have to remember to scope and all those kind of other things we did here. So same as before, we have to give it a name. I'd give it a description if this was in production as well. I choose the groups that are the same groups that are the ones that are already there. I haven't had to build anything special. Now this time I am only going to scope to iOS. Well, let's just remember that because I'm going to circle back to this in a second. Remembering also that I did these videos in about June or July. Okay? Think about what's happened since then. Okay, so once I've done that, we get to our configuration for our software update. For anybody that's not used software updates this way, it gives us the admin the ability to select a date and a time to enforce this update. In the meantime, the user can defer it if they're busy and update when they're ready to update. So in here, you have to give the date and the time that you want to force this update to happen. Okay, next, we want to do that target iOS version. Notice here, there is no drop-down that says latest major, latest minor. It wants a specific version of the OS, which is why we've targeted only my iOS devices, because I want my iOS devices to go, in this case, I think it was to 18.6. Yes, 18.6. Okay, now if I send that to a Mac device, don't worry, remember the device is clever. It's not going to try and download this mythical operating system that doesn't exist. And it's not, if you did a lower version, it's not going to downgrade anything. It just kind of goes, that's not for me, I'm not going to do anything with it. So I go away and we look at, we look to save this, and because we've used the template, we can just hit deploy. Right, there's nothing else to it. The template takes us to the very end, so we can just hit deploy. Now, I talked about that smart group, so let's go away and look at what I did there. All I did here is I created a smart group that said, I'm looking for just iOS devices. I put a minimum device version in there, but you don't really have to. What I did do, though, is put the max version, n-1. If I want to go to 18.6, I only want devices in here that are on 18.5 or less, because that means it's not the latest. Because when it is on the latest, it drops out of this group and tidies up all of those declarations that no longer need to be on the device. And we'll see that in a second. But what happened since I recorded these videos and today? Well, Apple did something that was kind of bizarre to us, I suppose, and they went, instead of having 2 different OS numbers for our different OSs, we're going to go 26 across the board. So what does that mean for us? Well, that means if I was doing this today to try and update to 26, I could have one blueprint that updated my entire fleet. Because in my OS version, where I have to put a specific version, of course, I just put in 26. So much like my update settings, I'm doing it once, I'm maintaining it once, and it's for all of my devices, simplifying the workflows that we have. Okay? What does that look like for the end user, though? Because if you've not used this, you might be like, well, how does that enforce that on my device? The first thing I want to show you is that in my configurations now, my declarations, I have 2, because remember, blueprints are flexible and stackable. So I have 2 blueprints on here at the moment. When my device gets the sort of declaration, it tells the user, notifies the user as we go along. As long as we've told it that we want to notify the user with those last settings, and how often this notifies depends on how close we are to that enforcement date, but they will get some sort of notification. So here you can say there's been an OS update scheduled, and in my case, it's in 7 hours. It's letting the user know. If the user swipes up, they have a second window that they have to touch. You can't just get rid of this. You have to kind of say, yes, I've understood what's going on. In our case here, when we hit dismiss, it takes us away to the settings app to say, we're downloading the OS for you. We're kind of not ready to do the actual update yet, but when we are, we'll let you know. So the next time that we get a notification, you might see 2. One that now has the system settings in there as well, because the operating system is now downloaded on the device. The next thing, again, that I have to touch the button on, I can either say, remind me later, because, I'm not ready yet, Or you hit install now, and it does what it says on the tin, it installs it. And if I say, I'm not ready yet, so dismiss it, then I go still to the settings app to be shown this is where I would install it. We're basically nudging the user every single time, like, we know you're not ready yet, but when you are, this is where you go to update it yourself. And then as you get closer to it, you get a notification every hour, or in the hour, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. We really do tell the user, we're about to update your device. Please make sure you've saved your work and all that kind of good stuff. But users are, oh yeah, and then every time you swipe up, you get the ability to kind of say, install now or to remind me later. But users are users, right? So even though we're telling them that we're about to update in 5 minutes, they're going to go, I don't care, and I'm just going to put the device back. So when the device knows, remember, because the device is clever, so the MDM server isn't saying, oh, by the way, it's 7 p.m. on that date. The device goes, I know it's 7 p.m. on that date, I must update. You get a notification that says it's past due. As a user, I swipe up, and the only thing that I can click on now, remember, I can't dismiss this unless I click a button, is install now. But I'm a user, so I don't hit install now, I just lock the device. And it says here, hey, it will be installed within an hour. And guess what? If I don't do anything with it within that hour, in fact, you can see by my screenshot that was within 5 minutes, that device went away and installed itself because the device is clever. So you can enforce these updates even if you have those deferral times. You know by that date and time your devices will be updated. And of course, it tells the user that it's updated, and because the device is clever and because we're using DDM, it's updated your your MDM server, your Jamf school server, to say, yes, I have the update. It's not waiting for a check-in. It does that immediately. And because of the way we built the smart group, that means our second declaration disappears because now it is on the latest version. So I haven't got any old declarations for older versions on there. We've removed that and kept things tidy. So that's software updates with DDM, or in blueprints, where we can schedule these updates and let the user defer things, give them that flexibility. But as admins, we know that it's going to be updated on that date. But I bet there's at least one person in here saying, that's great, Ant, but I want to update the devices now, not in 2 weeks, not even tomorrow, right now. Let me give you a tip. Put the enforcement date as yesterday, and it sets all that process off immediately. So once it's downloaded on the device, it will just go away and do that. OK, so blueprints in action. Let's kind of do what I'm going to call the advanced section. OK? So far, we've looked at how this can affect our end users. But lots of the time with devices, the end users aren't the only people that touch them. We have IT teams, or even yourself, that touch devices for troubleshooting and for all that kind of good stuff, right? So let's turn the tables on this example and look at what we can do with blueprints to help us and our IT team. Now let's just say, for example, that I am an IT manager. I have a team of people managing some devices in my school. One of the people that I manage is Dave. Meet Dave. He is my junior support engineer. Now, Dave hasn't got a lot of experience when it comes to macOS, but he's super keen, which is why I like him. As part of Dave's job, he's first-line support. He mans the support desk, and when I need him to, he goes away and visits our Mac suites. Because of his job, I require him to have admin access. Now, a ticket's just come in. Dave goes away to the Mac suite because he's got to do some stuff on the device, remove some apps. I can't remember what the ticket said exactly. I just know he's got to go away and look at some apps. So the first thing that he does is he goes away and verifies that the apps that are on there that he needs to remove, and I think it was Teams and Chrome or something. Like I said, I can't remember what the ticket said now. Like I say, Dave is keen, but hasn't got a lot of experience. He has seen, however, that a lot of the senior engineers use terminal and command line, and he's quite interested in kind of upping his skills. And he thinks something as simple as removing some apps and reinstalling them, bet I can learn something new out of terminal here. But Dave doesn't know how to do it, so he turns to everybody's best friend. Okay, he goes away to AI, and he says, hey, how can I automate this process? And of course, he gets an answer. And like any other good AI, or Dan as a service, maybe, I don't know, we get a command that we're able to copy and paste. Dave goes, I don't really know what this does, but it kind of looks good. It looks simple enough. So he goes away and copies that. He's got enough about him to understand that those apps where it said like app1.app and app2.app were placeholders. He's got enough about him to understand that. And he knows he's going to need to put the app names in there as part of his command. So he goes away and lists the applications that are on this device, just so he knows the actual name that he can go away and copy. So he copies and pastes and starts to remove some of those placeholder texts and adds the apps that he's looking to do. I've walked back into the office and thought, where's Dave? So I go away and give him a bit of a text and say, hey, where are you, Dave? He's picked his phone up and he's gone, oh, I'm busy, I'll look at it in a second, put his phone back down and press enter. Yes, yes. Now, it's unfair to say this is only because he's a junior engineer. We've all been distracted. But it's more likely that somebody without the experience would that doesn't really know what this does, is more likely to do this kind of thing. So with all the oohs and ahs that I got there, lots of you know what that does. But let's step this through. If this was an alternative universe, what would happen if Dave has actually pressed enter here? Because the thing that he's done, of course, is he's gone away and forgot, for anybody that didn't see what's happened here, he's gone away and forgot to put anything after the application. So basically, he's going to delete all applications, and because he's used sudo, there's no undo, there's no trash can, it's just going to go away and delete these, right? So in this alternative universe, he goes away and does that, he presses enter. First thing that he has to do is put his password in, of course, which he expects to because it's a sudo command. And very, very quickly afterwards, it mentions something about Safari. Now, Dave's kind of like, I didn't want to do anything with Safari. I was supposed to be doing something with Teams and Chrome or whatever it was that I was supposed to be doing. Not long after that, he starts to realize that his dock starts to jump around. And when I say jump around, I mean the apps start to get deleted. Bit of a panic on now, right? Because what's going on? I didn't mean to do any of this at all. And then eventually, he gets a load of errors, but those apps do look like they've disappeared, right? So at this point, he's probably like, oops, I did something that I wasn't supposed to do here. As in his panic, he goes away and does that list again, where he expected to see all those apps that he saw before, but only sees a couple. And like then we all do, we go, okay, so what does it look like in the GUI? Please make them still there. And they've all disappeared, okay? Obviously, what that means for Dave is that he's just taken out that machine. He's now got to rebuild that machine before it can be used again. Let's just hope he did it on that one machine and he didn't walk around the entire suite going, yeah, enter, yeah, enter, yeah, enter on all of the devices, because now we've got a suite that's out of action. Now, that's in an alternative universe, right? I, however, have configured our Macs using service configurations, DDM, and blueprints. What this allows me to do is send a configuration for services that are built into macOS. Things like Sudo, things like Apache, SSH, okay? Things that are misconfigured, if misconfigured, either by the end user or maliciously really changes that device security posture. And what I've been able to do here is manage how sudo is used and who can use sudo. That's probably the better way to say it. Because ultimately, oh yeah, let's see what would happen if now he presses enter. We've gone back in time. Let's bet he didn't delete everything, right? He presses enter this time, and he goes away and gets told that he can't do it. Great. But I do have engineers that do need to use sudo. My third tier support, for example. So Rochelle here is my third tier support engineer, and I do need her to use sudo. So she can log in either through terminal or as an actual user in the user space. And because Rochelle is part of that third tier support group, she is able to use the sudo command just fine. So I can give those privileges to those people that are more experienced, that don't go away and look at AI for commands to use in production environments. Right? Of course, once Rochelle's done, she logs out of her user, and Dave can still then go away and do what he needs to do. But talking about Dave, I do need him to still be able to delete those apps. That's part of his job. Only he has to do it through the GUI, where we do have undo, where we do have the trash can. So it's a much more safer environment to be able to do his work. Okay? Now, these service configurations, things like managing sudo, if you are a heavy Mac admin, you'll know we've been trying to manage these services for a long time. But we've kind of had workflows before whereby you would go, I've done this setting, and I've turned it to off, for example. But if you have an admin with the right privileges, which if they're an admin, they've got the right privileges, and the right knowledge, they could flip the switch and turn that back on again. Now, you might say, my staff don't have the knowledge to be able to know how to switch that switch back on. Well, they do, because this is a true response from my good friend AI. I gave it that error that we had when I tried to use sudo. It told me the exact file that I needed to change, why I couldn't use sudo, and then eventually, of course, it went, hey, do you want me to tell you how to do it? Okay, so people have the knowledge to do this. So what we've done in the past is we've built in complex workflows, which then monitor for these changes, and then flip the switch back again. Now, that remediation there could take seconds, could take minutes, hours, weeks. It all depends on what that remediation looked like. But as we saw, Dave only needed a few seconds to be able to delete all those apps. And that's really not that scary. Imagine if this was like a malicious attack, for example, right? So even the workflows we've had before are susceptible to kind of the change. And that's why Blueprints in DDM is so good, because it's managed, completely managed from the outset. I can't flip the switch. Once that configuration's on the device, I can't edit the file directly, and I can't add another file of the same type anywhere else in the system that will get used. It's only using this one. It's completely managed. We can't flip the switch at all. OK, that was just a quick example. And like I say, this is the advanced part, and I appreciate that it's probably not for everybody in this room. There's some people going like, I've only got iPads, this isn't a relevant thing. But I just wanted to point out that Blueprints is more than just these quote-unquote simple tasks, pushing out the software updates, doing these settings. These are the kind of things we've never been able to manage before, but we can thanks to DDM and thanks to Blueprints. I'd love to show you how I configured it, but given that, like I say, we might not have interest in the entire room and time, because this takes a little while to do, myself and a colleague that's just there did a session over the summer in Europe about Blueprints. And we configure this from the outset, so if you want to see all the settings that we did here, we can show you that. I've got some links at the end to this video. All of the examples are with Pro, but as you saw at the beginning, now that we're working across and linking our MDMs in, everything we say here is totally relevant to Jamf School, and everything that I've said here today is totally relevant to Jamf Pro, right? We also talk about legacy profiles, which is something that we're not going to go into too much today. You might have heard in the State of the Union that are coming soon to Jamf School, and they're going to make things awesome. Now, what can I configure here in Blueprints? Again, remembering that I had to submit this deck in July or whenever it was. We've even actually got a few more than these as well now since then. But this is what you can currently manage today. And we also had OS 26 ready components prior to Apple releasing the OS. So better than same-day support. It allowed you to go through your beta cycles and manage this new stuff to make sure it works the way that you want to. And as I've just said, legacy config profiles coming soon. So what are legacy config profiles? It's the ability for you to use your everyday settings and use that Blueprints interface and send them as declarations. Again, these are what were current when I built the slides, and I know there's more here when we're going to get them in Jamf School. But think about restrictions. That was the example that I gave at the very beginning, wasn't it? All that list of keys. Imagine being able to just say, I don't want these default keys anymore, or I want to search for that particular key, use the filters and all that kind of stuff. It's really going to make your life much easier. So, to wrap up, I suppose, what is Jamf Blueprints? What's this all about? So think about Blueprints about delivering DDM, which is Apple's latest management framework, which makes the device clever and makes our life easier. This is the big one that I hope I've said over and over and over again. Forget what you think you know about Blueprints. Blueprints aren't this monolithic thing that we've used to in the past. They're dynamic, they're flexible, they're scalable, and they can use the smart groups that you already have in your servers. And we've thought about the admin experience. I don't like having to search through keys in config profiles because I don't know where things are either. They change all the time. We have new ones. The list gets bigger. We want to make things efficient. So even as this protocol grows, we have the tools in place for us to be able to do this quickly and efficiently. And as I saw with that last example, it gives us the ability to really rethink and simplify complex workflows that some admins have used in the past, because that's been the only way we can even try to manage things. Because guess what? DDM gives us this new enhanced way of doing some things that we've never been able to do in the past, like service configurations, managed Sudo, or Apache configurations, for example. So I said throughout this, there's lots of things. There's lots of resources that have available to you as well. So I know some people don't like scanning QR codes. So the QR code and the link at the top are both the same thing. So if QR codes are your thing, great. If they're not, then that's the link to it as well. And then you can also find me on the interwebs with all those other different bits and pieces that often have Jamf School only related content on there, which can be a little bit difficult to find within the Mac community. So do find, if you find anything you need to know about Jamf School, have a look to see if I've done anything already about that. So with that, I would like to thank you. I actually had more time than I expected, so we can do some questions if you like.
Perfect. Please give him a round of applause real quick. Thank you, Ant. All right, if there's any questions, raise your hand and I'll run the mic to you. Don't be shy. Ant is very friendly. Oh, perfect.
I guess the only question I had was about conflicts with pre-existing profiles and DDMs. It doesn't look like there could be conflicts, but I'm just trying to think ahead of things if there would be.
Okay, that's a great question. There's a couple of things to talk about there. From our testing, there's a couple of things to note. If you've got something that you set in a config profile and something you've set in a blueprint, one says yes and one says no. As we all know, most restrictive wins. In the times where that isn't really the case because there's no such thing as like the most restrictive, we found that blueprint seems to win out. However, as part of us doing this, I know that we're working on ways to be able to tell you about, hey, there's a potential conflict here, remove it out of this configuration before you add it to this configuration. And that's something that we're working on to make your life easier as well. But yes, there is a potential that there is some conflict, but what conflicts will do is turn something off that you wanted on still more likely than anything else.
All right, time for maybe one more.
Hi, I just tried to scope a blueprint for 26 to my 15.7, and it let me do it, and then it errored out.
Yeah, so
deploy.
DDM and declarations are iOS 17 and above from the top of my head.
On macOS.
Oh, macOS. macOS should be fine. Okay, I'll come and have a chat with you afterwards. Sure.
Time for one more question, if somebody's got one. I see somebody up front.
If you have a software update restriction established from restrictions profile on macOS and you deploy the blueprint for a software update, does it respect the restriction that you have in place, or does it still push through because of it being DDM?
Right, so first things first, this is a great example kind of followed on from the question over there around if you're going to want to do this, then you'd want to do your deferrals through the software update settings in a blueprint and remove that from your configuration profile in the first place, if that makes sense, right? Do that swap on the settings first. But the way that, at least I understand it works, and we can double check that with some other clever people here, is that much like the old school kind of I'm pushing an MDM command, because it's come through an MDM, that will still update even if the deferral is on the device itself. But I will double check with some people around that, and we perhaps get back to you, because it's just for the UI, yeah, exactly. So if you push it out and you've got the deferral on, like it has always been, you can still get that pushed out through the MDM.
Cool, and you have a brain date today, right?
I do. I have a brain date at 11 today. There are still a few places left, so if you want to chat with me further about this, then sign up to that and we can have a chat there.
Awesome, that's all we have time for. Thank you, everybody. Give them one more round of applause. The next session will start in about 30 minutes, so you unfortunately have to clear out of here if you're attending that one, but thank you for coming today.